Thrilled to have here in person in our Los Angeles studios for the first time, hopefully first of many times, the Academy Award-winning actor who's in Hidden Figures in theaters near you, coming up nationwide this very Friday. Kevin Costner, good to see you, sir. How are you?
I'm good.
Good to have you.
I thought I'd just lift my head up like them NFL guys do.
Yeah, when you say, well, you have to say your school.
No, you just can't. Otherwise, I get that frozen look, and I understand why they did it. They've all been hung out to dry, and then somebody came up with the tilt.
Where they basically just look up and just say your name and then your school.
Alive, but now it's so mannered that it's they're gonna have, it's like the high five. They got to come up with something else. Now it's a fist.
Well, it's a fist pound. The high five was the butt slap. It used to be the butt slap. Right.
Yeah, it's been a complete evolution in our in sport as I've watched it.
Mm-hmm. And now, as you've watched it, what does get you to sit down? What sporting event gets you to sit down and make sure that you're not going to miss it?
Well, I watch the season. Baseball, I wait for the playoffs.
Okay.
I just do. It's just when I was a kid, all the Sports Illustrated stuff was on my walls, and I watched it all. As an adult, I just really I catch who's playing well, and I watch the playoffs. When it comes to football, I watch from the very first game all right through, and then love that weekend coming up when there's 4 games and
yeah.
Yeah, you work your schedule around it.
Yeah, and you got the 4 games coming up with the wild card, and then the national championship game that's coming up on Monday.
Yeah,
And
you try to. I mean, that's a case in point where I've doing a favor for a friend, and I realized I looked down and I saw, that's the game, and I thought, God, I can't be a weasel and get out of this, but
because you've already agreed to do something.
I've already agreed, and then
for the national championship game night.
And when I looked up, I saw that, so I'm going to have to figure out how to just scratch my ears when anybody's talking about stuff and come home and see it.
Yeah, do you ever DVR a game and do sports blackout?
You know what? I
Kevin?
actually don't like it. There's something impure about it. It's happened. I know.
Impure is a great name for it.
It's just impure.
It's a
like
great word.
It's like, wow, everybody knows except you, and you're watching it like something is new.
It drives me nuts.
I don't like it.
I know. And then there's always some way for the sports blackout to be pierced, whether you look down at a phone or the phone rings and nobody did.
Yeah, I can watch old games over and over, the classics, but I can't watch a tape delayed game. I'm not interested.
All right. Kevin Costner here on the Rich Eisen Show. You called in a few weeks ago after you were part of the Vin Scully farewell in Dodger Stadium. What'd you think of his farewell, where he just did his soliloquy and said,
yeah, I bumped into him 3 or 4 times over the course of my career, over probably the course of 20 years, and I got this call to I thought a lot of it, but I mean, even when I did Love of the Game, he came in and it's a fractured game, day into night, and he didn't know how the movie ended. We kind of told him how it did, and we said, do you think you could narrate this? And he said, well, let me look at it. And he looked at it, and he said, okay, here we go. And, Billy Chapel, 40 years old, the crossroads of his career. And, the hair on the back of your neck stands up. You see him go through it. And I remember the director and I just looked at him, and the director, Sam Raimi, said, well, could you do another one? And Vin kind of went, why, was something wrong? And there was nothing really wrong, but he goes, well, okay, if that's what you want. And I thought, oh no, And again, he's gifted. And I got this call with Koufax and Gibson, and he'd like you on the field. And I went, yeah, and I didn't say yes at first. I think a lot of people would assume that you would say yes right away. But I didn't. I held back, and I wasn't sure, because if I was going to do it, I really wanted it to come off. I labored over what I was able to say about him. I don't know if you ended up seeing that.
Oh yeah, no,
yeah.
It was.
But I labored
remarkable.
over it, and to be quite honest, I don't think this would insult Vin, because he's the first guy to give you an exit in his life. That makes a great friend. Guys who give you exits, right?
Yeah.
And soft out. And I labored over it. And the minute I said I would do it, I was miserable, because I wanted it to be as right as it could be.
Well, it sounds like he was giving Sam Raimi the soft exit when he said, why was there something wrong with that one? Because, he could have easily said, Sam, I'm in my 7th decade of being a one-take artist.
Yeah.
I'm a one-take kind of guy.
It's true, but in fairness to Sam, it was so disjointed what we handed him. And when he was like just a kid you want up in front of you off to the left. You could just copy off Vin forever.
Yes,
you know?
Right. I know, one of the all-time greats. Again, I've got Kevin Costner here on the Rich Eisen Show studio. Which of the, if you could get a sequel opportunity from any sports movie that you've done, that you'd like to continue on in the story
Right.
of somebody that you've portrayed,
Yeah.
that you'd like to get that one shot, see what so-and-so is still up to?
Yeah,
Who
I
would
think that
be?
Ron Shelton's Bull Durham, and everybody associates me with Bull Durham, right? But I associate Ron Shelton with Bull Durham. You know, that's the guy that, you know, handed me a career with that kind of a role. And I think finding out, you know, because Crash probably reminds me of a lot of managers, not always the best player, maybe not even a player that is a starter, although good enough to get to the pros. But when you think some of the legendary managers, Earl Weaver and Herzog and people like that, you know, they're never, for the most part, the guys on the team. And then these are these guys that manage. And I think Crash Davis, not ever making it to the bigs, having a kind of a version, a philosophy that you would say that he had as a player in the minor leagues, understanding the poetry and the vulgarity of the game and appreciating both. I think that him and Annie Sarandon could have had another life.
So what do you think Crash would be up to now?
I think Crash might have probably coached.
Like just
I think he probably could have been a big league coach. I think
in the majors, in the show?
Yeah, I think he could have been. I think that's a kind of guy that has a kind of perspective and knows the game and knows players. And I think that probably that could have been a sequel.
What do you think Ray Kinsella would be up to right now? After all those, I know it's as perfect an ending as any movie can have. Forget about sports
I know,
movies.
but I would hate to see him selling T-shirts and stuff like that. You know, I mean, hawking balls and
or corn,
You
like
know,
just
a guy that pretending not to be a millionaire because he was right.
Right, exactly. So you don't even want to consider.
I don't want to consider him selling bobbleheads. I'm sorry. There's a lot of little, you know, that I don't know. Is that our generation's It's a Wonderful Life? That movie.
I think you're not too far off. I guess in the fact that people always consider It's a Wonderful Life being a holiday movie in that regard.
No, I got you.
But I think I know what you're driving at.
There's something endearing about that
something
movie.
supernatural happening.
I mean, it's really about things that go unsaid between fathers and sons, and that's pretty biblical, right? And so, I mean, it's not that women don't enjoy that movie, but you know, the amount of guys that I saw, maybe even went to school with, that couldn't catch a breath after that moment. Literally, I remember meeting one of my buddies. He quickly left the theater, went into the bathroom, and I could see that it was my roommate, and I could see that he was really right. I said, "Are you all right?" He goes, yeah, I'm all right, because there was a couple stories he didn't tell me, being a roommate. And I said, "Well, are you okay?" And he goes, "Yeah, I think so." And he went back out, and as soon as he hit the open air of the lobby, it started to gush, and he had to go back in. And I thought to myself, you know, when movies are at their very best, that becomes possible.
Yeah, and in terms of a sports movie, there's always got to be sort of a father-son angle that really turns the key a little bit.
Well, I think
here.
if you think about sports, you have veterans and you have people just coming. And for a game, you know, it's baseball specifically. You know, I mean, a lot of these guys go into the pros right out of college in football and in basketball. And some of the guys you hear about in baseball, 7 years, 8 years later, they're making it to the bigs. There's something about that sport. It's changing, although you see guys coming in to make a big impact now. The big left-handed kid for the Cubs, the one that didn't play all year.
Yeah, what Chapman you're talking about? Oh, no, Schwarber. You're talking Kyle Schwarber coming in.
And you don't see that often, but you're seeing more of that where guys come in and make it. But baseball is about the buzz, and mentorship is if once guys get past being really competitive, because that's what I know a lot of the college guys are trying to constantly tell these players that are leaving them after 2 years. Augie Garrido and some people I know, George Horton, you know, they have these great players. They see themselves on the march to a national championship, and they disappear and go to the pros. And one of the things that they kind of say to them is, it's not going to be the same camaraderie. The guys you're sitting next to on the bus in the minor leagues are not going to like you because this is their living. And if you're a second baseman and they are, don't expect that thing. And so whatever warm and cozy feeling you had in college it's not going to be there. It's not going to be there.
Kevin Costner here on the Rich Eisen Show. We're going to come back in 60 ticks of the clock, talk some more about some of your filmography, if you will, and then Hidden Figures. It's really a special movie.
Yeah.
I saw it and really enjoyed you, not only your role in it, but it's well acted, and it's a movie that you don't really know the story about, even though it's about three real life ladies who helped contribute to our country years ago. That's next here on the Rich Eisen Show in just a minute's time. Kevin Costner back here on the Rich Eisen Show. Hidden Figures in theaters near you nationwide. It's already been playing in select theaters since Christmas Day. This Friday, it's going to hit theaters nationwide. Hidden Figures is a film about three African-American ladies who contributed to the space race to get John Glenn, may he now rest in peace, being the first person up in space, first human being up in space and back home. And I didn't know there was some sort of race story within the space race.
Kevin. That's what's coming out of the theaters. I didn't know this story. I should have known this story. And the fact is that, you know, there's a lot of stories in history that go untold, and so that's not a tree to hang by. You know, that's not a sin, because there's stories that just aren't going to be told. And in this instance, about these three gals, we don't know about them. But in truth, there is a problem with not knowing about this story, because if you were telling the story of John Glenn, if you were telling the story of it and you got to the seminal moment for him where he's going to go into space, there's a moment in time where he's not going to go because the computer's not right. Nothing is lining up. He's not going to go unless someone can do the math. And it happens to be this young African-American woman. And so if you're telling a story about John Glenn, at any point you're telling, and his story's been told over and over, that would be like leaving out a punchline of a really good joke. And did you know that at the moment he was supposed to go, he wasn't going to go? It took a little girl with a pencil and an eraser to actually, that's a story that race shouldn't have even gotten in the way of. That's just a very dramatic moment. The fact that there were these three women, that there were these African-American women who contributed to the space program. They were called computers long before we called our thing computers. That's a little charming, and I could also see why that story hasn't been told, because 1,000 haven't been told. But to know John Glenn's story and to not think of this woman, that feels like a glaring omission to me.
And how much research did you do on Al Harrison, who you played in this film?
Well, you have your kind of standard stuff that you can look at with, the different documentaries, but And I had that, but really what happened was the character I played, they couldn't get the rights to, unlike the women, that was their story. I was a combination of three different characters, and we had to kind of figure a way to smooth that out to let me support this movie, because that's really what I did as I came in and supported it.
And it's really great. I mean, start to finish, it's a fun film, and then occasionally it's exhilarating, and then they have John Glenn just recently pass away too. It's kind of interesting how it all comes together.
It was a sad day for a man who had a pretty great life.
Incredible. And in terms of your filmography, there's a couple films I want to bring up that I've never spoken to you about. The first one is Fandango, that I don't know a lot of folks might know about. This 1985, where you and three longtime friends, before go off to the war, decide to go on a little bit of a fandango.
It's a really beautiful movie. It's a real coming of age movie that helped define my career in a way, although unknown. And it's one of those coming of age movie that's not about just getting laid for the first time. That a lot of those movies hinge on that moment, right? This movie it goes a lot deeper, and it catches you in the end, and it's a really artistically done. It's fun. It's very American, and it was just right for me.
Yeah, and I don't want to give away part of the ending there, because it's pretty incredible. But I mean, at what point of your career was this?
It was really early. It was right after The Big Chill, which I got cut out.
Yeah, how did you get cut out of that?
Well, it just I think as Kasdan put the movie together, he just understood what he liked in writing. He didn't feel like it fit the movie at that moment.
Because you played the college,
the guy who was killed, the guy who committed suicide, and I think that Larry would only know absolutely different versions of it. One when all the people there was a flashback at one point in it, and everybody had long hair, had the mustache. And actually, their long hair and mustaches made them look older than when they were 20 years later when they were clean cut, in a way. I don't know the absolute reason, but I know that it was being cut out of that movie was being a part of that movie was really the start of my career.
But, I mean, was that a seminal moment for you as an actor, for you to be told that you're cut out? And
I had a bigger idea about my career, that I felt like I was right where I was supposed to be. And once I was there, I really watched carefully. And yeah, I could, if I was some guy in a little city and the circus came to town and they asked if I would do a small part, and then everybody went to the theater and I wasn't in it, I think I might be disappointed. But the minute I was actually cast, I thought my career at that moment had taken off. Forget about the film being made. Forget about later on that I was cut out. I knew that when I was cast in that movie that I was finally on the yellow brick road.
And then another film I want to bring up is No Way Out, which I love that movie.
That was a movie I found. It was right after Silverado, and Orion Pictures, who's now gone, was interested in doing a movie with me, and they thought, well, I like this guy, he's full of juice. We got these movies, and all of them I didn't care for. And so they went, you don't want to do any of our movies? I said, well, I don't see anything that fits me. I said, but I did read a movie that I liked over at Warner Brothers that they weren't going to make. It was called Finished with Engines, which is a naval term for shutting the thing down. I thought it was just perfect. And they said, well, let us see if we can't get that. So they got the movie, and then after that, Warner's never let another movie go because it was a really nice success, but it was really beautifully written. It caught me by surprise, and like I said earlier, when I read, Field of Dreams, or when I read these movies for the first time, once in a while I realize when I'm done that I have a really big secret.
So No Way Out was one of those for you?
It was one of those. When I read it, I knew it was really good. By saying no to everything they had, I said, well, what about this movie? So early in my career, I was always kind of deciding what I would do.
What was it like being on a set with Gene Hackman?
Well, Gene, people ask all the time, who's the best actor, who's the biggest star, who's the blah, blah, blah. The line's long for the great actors I've been able to work with, it really is. But I would say probably Gene was the best actor that I'd ever worked with. I think Sean Connery was the biggest star I'd ever worked with.
And that's The Untouchables.
Yeah, and I had this is too long of a story, but I had one with Gene. When this scene came up, we had been doing every scene to that point around a desk, just like this, every scene. I said to the director, I said, look, I don't feel like it's right. Gene Hackman standing there listening. I feel like it's over here, and it was like, no one was saying anything. The director and I really butted heads on it. And I said, look, the guy's been basically a dick to me the whole movie, so to speak, and now he's actually in trouble. He calls me in the morning. I said, at 4 in the morning, I think he'd have a couch, sit down, and maybe there'd even be some tea or orange juice, hey, I need to talk to you. The same guy that needs you now brings you in. I said, maybe we could do this scene over here. And I realized that something's off because he's being quite nice to me. And then there's a moment that I find out what's happened, and I actually go into the bathroom, and then I completely am shocked.
I remember that scene.
And I'm taken out. So there was this real battle about where this scene was going to take place.
Physically in the room.
Yeah, and we really went head to head on this. And finally, for whatever reason, and Gene's just like listening. And finally, for whatever reason, I said, I don't care, it's here. And I hated to do that, but I just said, it's here. And I don't need all of our scenes here. It's here.
Sure.
So we did it. And at one point, they were saying, well, what's Gene going to do? And I said, Gene will figure out what to do. Because he's really good. Yes. Gene will figure out what to do. Yes. So I do the scene, and we do it all day, and it's a scene now that's in the movie. And I remember as I was walking out to my car on MGM lot, Gene was getting in, and he goes, hey, I want to talk to you. And I walked over, and he goes, look, man, if you ever do that in front of me again, I'm just going to, the way you disrespect, I'm just going to tell you, that's not what he said. Mm-hmm. That's what I thought he was going to say.
What did he say?
He looked at me and he said, hey, you know, I went through a divorce. I've been doing a lot of kind of questionable movies lately. And when I saw you fighting for what you wanted today, he said it reminded me of how I used to feel about acting. He says, it was good what you did. And then he just got in his car and drove off.
Damn.
Yeah. But in my mind, that's where I thought he was going. If you ever do that again, because he was real quiet, and I was really having to drag this moment to where I thought it should be. It was all by myself, you know? And so in my mind, I saw him maybe laying me out because he was real quiet during the whole thing. But whatever I did helped him. But he has no idea that what he said to me, how it helped me.
Because he's also a big, imposing guy, right?
He is a big guy.
I saw him once at the Super Bowl. He's like
he was a big guy, but he said that to me. It was a real turn.
That's awesome. Let me tell you this. I'm just going in my head with the filmography and what it was. I hope he didn't consider Hoosiers one of those movies that he regretted doing. I can't imagine.
He told me personally, that movie surprised him more than any movie he'd been a part of. I feel like I'm talking a little out of school, but he was uncomfortable with the shooting of that movie and the direction that he thought it was going. And I remember seeing that movie thinking it was one of the best sports movies ever.
No doubt. I mean,
but I think he was uncomfortable.
It gets me right in the heart and the gut every time I see that.
I agree. And it's just really nuanced, and Hopper was great. Gene was good, and Barbara Hershey's always good.
Mm-hmm. And same to you, sir. Thanks for coming in, talking about Hidden Figures in your whole career. Love it. Anytime. Absolutely anytime this place is open to you. Go see Hidden Figures. It's an awesome film.
Guys.
And Kevin Costner is awesome in it. Back with more here on The Rich Eisen Show in a moment.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.